Okay, let's dive into a really interesting journey today. Imagine selling a company for what, over $250 million by your mid-20s?
Yeah, and then realizing that, the money wasn't really the point.
Or trying to quit a job that's just crushing your soul multiple times, but failing because it was just too, I don't know, awkward.
Right. Well, this is all part of the story of Tony Hsieh, and it's told in his own words in the book, Delivering Happiness.
Yeah, and what's interesting here is that this isn't like a dry corporate history or some standard biography.
No, definitely not. It's really personal. It focuses on his path, his journey to discovering what actually mattered in business and, well, in life.
The pursuit of happiness, basically, for himself and for others.
Exactly. And he actually wrote it himself, which is pretty cool. He even kept some intentional grammatical choices to keep it sounding like him, his authentic voice. He mentions Jen Lim as a key helper too, project manager.
Right. So our mission in this deep dive is really to pull out the most important nuggets, the surprising facts from these pages.
Think of it as, your shortcut. A way to understand has his pretty unique, sometimes kind of counterintuitive, approach to building companies and ultimately finding purpose.
We'll trace his path through these different ventures, look at the philosophies, the hard-won lessons that really shaped how he thought.
Yeah, it's all about uncovering the insights behind the success stories and that huge focus he eventually developed on culture and happiness.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The book takes us way back, right? Back to his childhood.
Uh-huh. Where that entrepreneurial spark was already there, definitely flickering, sometimes failing pretty hilariously.
Like the worm farming business.
Oh, yeah. That infamous worm farm. A $33.45 investment, I think it was,
hmm
for over 100 worms.
Fed raw egg yolks, dreaming of multiplying profits.
And wasn't there a plan to cut them in half? To,
Yeah.
double the inventory?
Yeah, quickly abandoned though. Too much work apparently. He felt genuinely bad when that whole thing flopped.
And if you connect that to later, he reflects on Thomas Edison's idea,
Mm.
failing your way to success. So that early failure, that lost $33.45, wasn't just, losing money. It was a foundational lesson, really, about the reality of business.
Yeah.
It kind of set the stage for a career where he wasn't afraid to try stuff that might not work out.
He kept trying though. The newspaper route.
Yeah, quick lesson there.
That-
Figured out it was only $2 an hour, valued his time more than that.
And The Gobbler, his own newsletter.
Sir.
Charging friends $5 a copy.
Which, predictably, lasted until his friends ran out of lunch money.
Uh-huh, yeah. These early attempts, they show a pattern, right? Try things, learn super fast, and then pivot or just quit if it wasn't working or, wasn't interesting anymore.
Exactly. But then came the button-making mail-order business. That was inspired by Boy's Life magazine.
Ah, and this one actually worked.
It did. $100 invested, roughly. 50 for the kit, 50 for parts, and it brought in a steady $200 a month in middle school.
Wow.
The insight wasn't just that mail order could work, it was like you didn't need face-to-face interaction. And crucially, he figured out how to scale it. He outsourced the labor to his younger brothers.
That's brilliant. Learning about repeatable processes early on.
Yeah. He also talks a bit about his upbringing, pretty strict, the pressures you sometimes hear about with, quote, Asian culture, academics, music, sports,
He felt like he was the ultimate scorecard for his parents.
and those music lessons. Mandatory. Piano, violin, trumpet, French horn.
His solution wasn't practice, though. It was this elaborate scheme with a tape recorder.
Right. To fake practicing while he actually read Boy's Life or other books instead.
What's kind of funny is how he even viewed that. He said he couldn't see the scalability of mastering multiple instruments. It felt inefficient to him.
That focus on efficiency, on scalability, it was there really early, even when faking French horn practice.
High school brought computers. He discovered Pascal programming, became obsessed, spent all his free time in the lab.
Ended up teaching the class later, apparently. Technology became his playground,
And that led to modems, bulletin board systems, BBSs.
which naturally led to accidentally figuring out how to make free phone calls. Just plugging a regular phone into the modem jack.
Leading to the infamous 976 SEXY call anecdote.
Oh, yeah. He describes using his deepest voice, trying to sound older.
Only for the operator to get suspicious because, well, he was clearly nowhere near 21.
It's funny and awkward, but it really shows that driving curiosity, right?
Mhm.
Wanting to explore boundaries, push things, even if it leads to a cringeworthy moment.
Fast forward to Harvard. He needs a study guide for a Bible class, doesn't want to do all the reading himself.
So necessity kicks in, mother of invention, right?
He uses electronic news groups, email. remember, this is early internet stuff, to set up a virtual study group
Right. Everyone gets assigned topics, contributes research. He compiles it all,
into this comprehensive guide. Sells it for $20 a copy, but only to the people who contributed.
so he gets the best study guide, makes a profit, and avoids doing most of the reading. Genius. It even got written up in the Crimson.
It's such an early example of leveraging tech and collaboration to solve a problem efficiently, a skill that became, pretty crucial later on.
He had all sorts of jobs at Harvard, too. Catering, programming.
An internship at Microsoft, worked at BBN doing early internet backbone stuff. That even needed secret clearance, secure rooms, the whole deal.
Which weirdly ties into his short stint with the Guardian Angels in Boston.
Yeah. His gang name was secret. He thought it was because of his government clearance.
But nope. Turns out it was meant to be like ancient Chinese secret. Reality was stranger than fiction there.
And back on campus, he missed the entrepreneurial thing, so he takes over the Quincy House Grill with his roommate Sanjay.
The Quincy House Grill. This is where the legendary McDonald's patty arbitrage happened.
Right. A city ordinance meant no fast food nearby, so he exploited it.
Bought frozen McDonald's patties and buns off campus for like $1 total. Sold the burgers for $3 on campus.
It's a clever hack, just understanding the market, the regulations.
Totally. They tripled sales by adding music videos pre-TiVo, remember, and pizza.
Mhm.
This is where he met Alfred.
Alfred, the #1 pizza customer, nicknamed the human trash compactor.
And Monster, apparently, for eating all the leftovers. These relationships, formed over late-night pizza in a dorm grill, they became really foundational later.
So he graduates, aims for the highest paying job possible, lands at Oracle. Felt like winning the game.
Yeah, they went through this intense database programming training first, which he actually found exciting and challenging.
But the actual job, oh man. He describes just soul-crushing boredom, setting up a 5-minute test that then runs for 3 hours, doing maybe a couple a day.
And nobody was tracking his time.
Okay.
So first he felt lucky, then just
Yeah.
bored. Utterly, profoundly bored.
Which led to those super awkward resignation attempts.
Right. Going to the wrong side of the building, faking trips to the bathroom, running into his boss.
It wasn't just about quitting. It sounds like this desperate escape attempt, trying to get away from that lack of stimulation, lack of purpose, a feeling that would really shape his future choices about work environments.
And when he finally managed to resign, his boss was apparently thrilled for him. Assumed he was joining some hot startup.
The reality. He quit out of sheer boredom to start a web design business with Sanjay from their living room, making less than half his Oracle salary.
His dad was skeptical, apparently, doubted web design could scale. And critically, they realized fastest, they weren't passionate about web design itself.
Another key lesson, right? It's not just about running a business. It's about what kind of business, and do you actually care about the work?
Exactly. So that web design boredom led directly, almost immediately, to Link Exchange, built almost as an experiment.
They put a test version out on, 50 small websites, expected maybe a few signups?
Yeah, and over half signed up in 24 hours. That was a light bulb moment. They knew they'd stumbled onto something big.
Initially, they focused purely on growth, not money. He describes working around the clock.
Responding to customer service emails in minutes, literally.
Yeah.
Friends would come over to help and just end up joining the company, never left. It sounds chaotic, but also exciting, magical.
That super fast responsiveness, that was an early insight, wasn't it? Customer service as a differentiator, even before it was like a formal strategy.
Definitely. And this crazy growth brought the first buyout offer from a guy named Lenny, Bigfoot.
Offering $2 million cash after only 5 months.
That's got to be incredibly hard to turn down.
Yeah. But they believed it was worth more. They used some negotiation advice. Don't care too much about the outcome. Be willing to walk away.
So their strategy was ask for $2 million.
Which they did. And Lenny walked.
So after turning down the $2 million, they brought in a third partner, Ali, got a real office, grew to about 25 employees, mostly friends.
And they met Jerry Yang from Yahoo, which was like meeting an internet rock star back then.
Huge deal. They were hoping for maybe an advertising partnership.
Instead, Yahoo offers $20 million to buy them.
His reaction, wow, so glad we didn't sell Lenny 5 months ago.
But then came the angst. I mean, $20 million, that's life-changing. He actually made a list, a thought experiment.
Right. What would he do with $20 million? Buy a condo, home theater, travel.
And the last item on the list, start another company.
That was the key insight. The money wasn't the end goal. It was the act of building, of growing something that was fulfilling for him.
Still, despite that realization, they decided to sell for the $20 million.
Then Sequoia Capital came in, invested $3 million. Michael Moritz joined the board, and things really took off.
Rapid growth, big advertisers, hiring smart, passionate friends. He said they felt on top of the world.
They even had that funny hazing thing for new hires, the important meeting where you had to wear a suit and tie.
But underneath all that success, something started to go wrong. As the company got bigger, the culture started to deteriorate.
Yeah, he uses phrases like death by 1,000 paper cuts or Chinese water torture, a slow, kind of insidious decline that he couldn't even pinpoint the start of.
It was a hard lesson, wasn't it, about how fragile culture can be during rapid growth if you're not intentionally nurturing it.
Definitely. Then the economy hit turbulence, Russian currency crisis, long-term capital collapse.
Suddenly they had cash issues. An IPO wasn't going to happen. They needed funding, like mezzanine funding.
So they went back to Yahoo, talked to Netscape, Microsoft. But instead of investment offers, they got acquisition offers again.
They negotiated hard. Asking price, $250 million plus. Microsoft was interested.
He actually made a bet with Alfred. If they got $250 million, Alfred owed him a cruise. If not, Tony owed Alfred one.
And they got it. So they took that celebratory cruise to the Bahamas after the deal was signed, sold to Microsoft in 1998 for $265 million.
He mentions this moment in a nightclub on the cruise. Everyone dancing, this unified energy, reminding him of a rave he'd been to, that feeling of collective energy, shared purpose that really stuck with him.
So after Microsoft, he's kind of figuring out what's next, joking about being James Bond or robot inventor.
Living above a movie theater and a Taco Bell was apparently on the list too.
And then he finds these lofts at 1,000 Van Ness in San Francisco, which were near an AMC theater and a Taco Bell. Felt like a sign.
So he bought a loft, and then friends started moving into the same building. They created this sort of self-made community, a tribe.
They ended up owning like 20% of the lofts, controlling 40% of the HOA board. He called it real-life monopoly.
It was all about valuing spontaneity, convenience, a deliberate effort to recreate that sense of connection they felt they'd lost at Link Exchange as it grew.
He even bought a second loft, specifically designed for parties and gatherings, just a place for connection.
Yeah, this focus on creating spaces for community, it wasn't random. It was a direct response to realizing what he valued.
Around this time, he and Alfred started Venture Frogs, an investment fund, an incubator.
Famously named after a friend's pet frog, on a dare.
They raised $27 million, mostly from ex-Link Exchange folks, and set up shop right there in the lofts.
And that's where the Zappos pitch happened. Nick Swinmurn calls him up about shoesite.com. The idea. The Amazon of shoes.
Tony's first reaction, he thought it was the poster child of bad internet ideas.
Right. Why would anyone buy shoes online without trying them on? It just seemed wrong, instinctively.
But he met Nick, described him as casual, passionate. The pitch made sense. Huge industry, $40 billion. Catalog sales proved people bought shoes remotely. E-commerce was growing.
And Nick had already started proving the concept himself. Buying shoes from local stores, shipping them out. Small scale, not profitable, but proving people would buy.
But the real business idea, the hook, was dropshipping, partnering directly with brands.
Which was the counterintuitive part. It hadn't really been done in footwear. The whole bet was on convincing brands to do it, likely at upcoming shoe shows.
And Fred, who had experience from Nordstrom, was ready to jump in if they got funding. That showed real commitment, a leap of faith.
So Venture Frogs invested $500,000, betting on that unproven dropshipping model being scalable, even though Tony initially doubted the whole market.
It highlights that insight, doesn't it? Sometimes the opportunity isn't the obvious market, but an innovative business model within it.
Exactly. Now, one of the really unique, insightful parts of the book is how he talks about poker.
Right. He got serious about playing limit hold'em. Studied the books, practiced, learned the math.
And realized the math gave him an edge, like having a biased coin. You might lose some hands, but long term, if you play the math right, you're guaranteed to win.
And he drew all these parallels to business. What was the biggest aha moment he mentioned?
Took him 6 months to figure it out, he said. It was that the most important decision in poker happens before you even play a hand. It's table selection.
Choosing which game to sit down at.
Exactly. Applying that to business. Choosing the right markets, the right industry, the right partners, that's more critical than how well you execute day to day after you're already in.
If you're at a bad table, a tough market with irrational competitors maybe, you're unlikely to win big no matter how skillfully you play.
It really speaks to that initial Zappos investment, doesn't it? Choosing that table despite doubts about the market itself, because he saw potential in the model they were proposing.
What were some other poker lessons he applied?
Well, don't play games you don't understand. Learn when the stakes are low. That connects right back to his early ventures, right? Trying things, learning fast, getting out if they didn't make sense.
It even justifies quitting Oracle. He didn't understand or enjoy that game.
Totally. And things like act weak when strong, strong when weak. That's marketing, bluffing. And differentiate yourself. Do the opposite of what everyone else is doing.
Like focusing intensely on customer service when maybe others weren't, or choosing drop shipping initially.
Yeah, exactly. Branding and strategy plays. He also stressed being patient, thinking long-term. Poker sessions can be long. Business takes years. Stamina and focus win.
And don't go on tilt. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment in stressful situations. Take a break. That's huge in business, too.
For sure. Interestingly, he eventually got bored with limit hold'em once it became too mechanical for him.
Which kind of reinforces that for him, it wasn't just about winning. It was the challenge, the learning, the connection, maybe.
That seems like it. So, okay, back to Zappos. Those years right after the initial investment, they were brutal. Just a fight for survival.
Venture frogs put in more money. Tony personally invested when the fund ran out.
All happening during the recession, the dot-com crash, 9/11. He said it felt like the universe was testing their commitment.
He sent that famous email, October 2000, basically saying, look, for the next 9 months, we have one focus. Profitability, survival, just focus on gross profit.
And that sheer need to survive, it actually became this powerful unifying force for the team. People made sacrifices, shared this fierce passion just to keep the company alive.
Then came that massive strategic pivot, the bet the company move.
Moving away from drop shipping, deciding to carry their own inventory.
They realized drop shipping just had too many problems. Brands weren't set up for it. The best products were often sold out.
The insight was, to deliver the kind of selection and speed customers really wanted, they had to control the inventory themselves, just like successful brick-and-mortar stores did.
But wow, the risk involved. Hiring buyers, convincing brands who were used to drop shipping, new software, warehouses.
And needing $2 million in cash, like immediately.
Tony committed to finding the cash. Fred committed to convincing the brands. It was this huge leap of faith built on trust and realizing, look, there's no other way forward. The alternative was slow death.
Yeah. This pivot led to intense logistical headaches, though. They tried outsourcing warehousing to eLogistics in Kentucky.
Total mess, right. Inventory problems, they oversold their capabilities. Zappos had to move the inventory again.
Tony basically told Keith, one of their key guys, you need to go to Kentucky now.
And Tony himself drove Keith's truck out there. A 36-hour, 18 Red Bulls each kind of trip.
It sounds kind of crazy, but it shows the absolute priority, the personal commitment Tony placed on fixing that core operational piece. Logistics isn't sexy, but it was fundamental to the customer experience they wanted to build.
And right in the middle of this cash crisis, Tony makes this huge personal sacrifice.
Selling the party loft. The San Francisco party loft, the hub of their community there.
Just to fund inventory, to buy Zappos maybe 2 more months of life. It was a race against time.
And what makes it even more dramatic is he left on a pre-planned trip to climb Kilimanjaro right then.
He basically told his dad, sell the loft for whatever price gets us enough cash runway. Then he left for Africa.
He describes being on that climb grueling, altitude sickness, cold, feeling like giving up during the pitch-black midnight summit hike.
And all the while thinking about Zappos back home, feeling like vultures were circling, the cash flow problem was like an infection, worrying he'd made the wrong call.
He said there was no sense of progress in the dark, just feeling totally isolated.
And then, while he's still on the mountain, he gets the news.
The loft sold for exactly the amount they needed. It felt like fate. Bought them 6 more months.
He actually thought, never dealing with a fortune teller again. It's such a powerful story of personal sacrifice intertwined with the company's survival. It became part of the Zappos legend.
And that inventory strategy, it worked. Sales exploded. Hit $32 million in 2002. They set that audacious goal. $1 billion in sales by 2010.
They knew they were on the right path, but it was still this constant tightrope walk. Managing cash flow, negotiating with vendors.
This period, surviving all of that, led to that critical conversation with Fred. Okay, what do we really want to be when we grow up?
Was it just about selling shoes? Or something bigger?
And this is where that vision crystallized.
Okay.
Zappos as a customer service company. inspired by that customer who joked about Zappos Airlines after a great experience.
They realized their edge wasn't just selection or price. It was delivering the absolute best customer experience.
Around then, they were trying to get a $6 million line of credit from Wells Fargo. Pretty unusual for an unprofitable .com.
But their passion, their growth, it impressed the bankers. Still, juggling payables week to week was incredibly stressful. He faced that tough call: pay employees or pay vendors.
He chose employees first, managed the vendor relationships with just constant, honest communication, asking for extended terms.
That decision, risky as it was with vendors, built huge trust internally, showed commitment to their people, and thankfully, the Wells Fargo loan came through, gave them breathing room.
Zappos Airlines became the guiding principle. Build the brand around service, and not just for customers.
Right, extending it to vendors too, treating them like partners, even sharing buyer information, which was apparently unheard of in retail.
Building those relationships was key. Golf tournaments led to new categories, like getting into eyewear because of an Oakley rep they met. Their relationship with UPS was crucial. They saw their rep, Alex, as a friend. Same service mentality applied internally and externally.
Then came another huge strategic decision: moving the headquarters.
From San Francisco to Las Vegas.
SF was great for tech talent, sure, but hiring and keeping customer service reps there was tough. People saw it as a temporary gig.
Vegas offered a better hiring pool for service roles, more stability. But the biggest benefit, maybe even unintended at first, was cultural. It basically forced employees who moved to hang out together outside of work. They had to build a new social network from scratch. Work friends became real friends. It massively strengthened that tribe feeling he was always trying to cultivate.
So culture had always been kind of there, learning from the link exchange mistakes.
Right. But in Vegas, it became the absolute #1 priority. He explicitly states it became even more important than customer service, at least initially.
Because the belief was
That if you get the culture right, a strong, intentional culture, then great customer service will just happen naturally as a byproduct.
So hiring changed fundamentally. It wasn't just about skills anymore.
No, it was. Is this someone you genuinely want to hang out with? They believe the best ideas often came from those informal social interactions.
This commitment led to things like the Culture Book, Jen Lim's project.
Which was pretty radical, right? Publicly asking employees, partners, customers what the Zappos culture meant to them and welcoming negative feedback. It made the culture tangible, explicit, something that could evolve.
And they doubled down on service being company-wide. No outsourcing the call center.
Viewing every single call and an investment in the brand, not an expense to be minimized. Empowering the reps. Celebrating those internal wow stories.
Hiring people passionate about service. Giving great service to everyone: customers, employees, vendors.
That's why all new hires, no matter their role, spent 2 weeks on the phones.
And the famous $2,000 offer to quit during training.
Still stands, apparently. Less
Yeah.
than 1% ever take it.
Oh.
But it's a filter, right? It ensures people are there for more than just a paycheck. It's a powerful signal of their commitment to culture fit.
This intense focus naturally led to defining their core values. And they didn't want just, nice words on a poster.
No, they wanted committable values. Values they would actually hire and fire based on.
Took a year-long process, brainstorming, employee feedback to get to the final 10.
And they deliberately left out integrity. The thinking was integrity should just naturally come from living the other values.
Think about core value #10. Be humble. That became a key hiring filter, rejecting talented people who were arrogant. That's pretty counterculture in many corporate environments.
Totally. These core values got embedded everywhere. Mission statement, culture, brand, strategy, even performance reviews. They shared stories constantly to make them real.
Like Martha C's random act of woe-ness at the airport, helping a stranger.
Or Vanessa L's story about do more with less. Finding incredible joy making a makeshift Christmas dinner with hardly any money when she was really struggling. Using sifted marshmallows on yams. It showed the value wasn't just about budgets, but about attitude and finding happiness.
These stories weren't just anecdotes, they were illustrations of the values in action.
They also invested heavily in employee development through the pipeline team. Training became key.
And that insight about perceived progress, that was clever.
Yeah, instead of one big promotion after, say, 18 months, they broke it down into smaller, incremental promotions every 6 months or so. Same endpoint, same total time.
But that feeling of constant forward movement made employees significantly happier. That sense of progress is powerful.
Even tough times, like layoffs in 2008 due to the economy, were handled differently.
Right.
proactively, transparently.
Which, counterintuitively, seemed to test and ultimately strengthen the culture. People banded together.
In all the media coverage Zappos started getting, Hsieh insists it wasn't because they suddenly ramped up PR efforts.
It's just a byproduct.
Yeah, a byproduct of consistently improving the customer experience and strengthening the culture. The lesson being, if you consistently WOW people and live your values authentically, you create interesting stories. The press will eventually find you.
Tony also talks about his own journey with public speaking, something he initially dreaded.
But he did it for the business, for personal growth, practiced a lot, had this epiphany.
That no one knows what you plan to say. Just focus on the message. Be authentic.
Exactly. And then he actually started enjoying it. And it led to unexpected benefits, meeting authors, people wanting tours, new relationships, business opportunities, things that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't pushed himself.
Okay, so this whole journey, this focus on culture and service, it eventually leads to the Amazon acquisition. But there was tension first, right? With the Zappos board.
Yeah. The board was focused more on traditional short-term financials. Zappos, under Tony, had this much longer-term vision, centered on culture, service, building something beyond just e-commerce. It was a fundamental clash.
This tension got so bad, they decided they needed to buy out the board, which meant raising $200 million.
So they started looking for new investors, and during that process, Amazon contacted them. They already had a long-standing relationship.
Amazon proposed an acquisition instead. Zappos had to evaluate it carefully.
They used two main criteria. One, would this accelerate Zappos' growth and mission? And two, critically, would they maintain control over their unique culture?
And after a lot of discussion, getting to know the Amazon folks better, the answer to both was yes.
The deal was structured carefully. Zappos' brand stays separate. They get access to Amazon's massive resources. Their mission, delivering happiness to all stakeholders, continues, and they keep their own vendor relationships. It was about finding a partner to accelerate their vision, not erase it.
The announcement to employees was classic Tony Hsieh, the email subject line.
Q, can you please stop? Oxy X by. Ha, yeah. He expected productivity to just tank that day.
But apparently, employees were surprised, asked questions, but then got back to work pretty quickly. They were excited about the possibilities.
At the big all-hands meeting, announcing the deal valued at over $1.2 billion, by then, Tony reflected, said if he did it all over again, he wouldn't change much because they learned from mistakes. But he wished they could have done it all faster.
The moment the deal officially closed, Tony was actually in New Delhi. He had a call with Fred and Alfred, did their traditional Grey Goose toast.
But the really significant moment he describes was back at that all-hands meeting after the announcement. The energy in the room, clapping, cheering. It wasn't just about the money or the bonus, though they did get Kindles.
It felt like more than that.
Yeah. It symbolized reaching this incredible milestone, exceeding goals, but also starting the next leg of the journey, a journey to help change the world in their own way, finding that path that truly combined profits, passion, and purpose, the ultimate goal, delivering happiness.
And the book kind of wraps up by digging into the science of happiness itself, drawing on positive psychology.
Right. Tony talks about becoming fascinated by that why exercise. If you keep asking yourself why you want something, why you want that promotion, why you want that car, why you want more money.
You eventually get back to the same ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Happiness. People just take different paths trying to get there.
He notes how psychology research shifted, especially after 1998, moving beyond just treating mental illness to actively studying how to make normally functioning people happier.
He uses that marathon training analogy. Your instinct might be to train really hard, push yourself constantly.
But research actually shows that long, slow runs, where you can actually hold a conversation, are more effective for building endurance long term. What feels counterintuitive often yields better results.
And he applies that directly to happiness. Our instincts aren't always right.
Yeah. The things we think will bring lasting happiness, chasing pleasure, accumulating wealth, research suggests they often don't. While other things like meaningful contribution or personal growth might provide a much deeper, more lasting fulfillment.
He breaks down the 3 types of happiness identified by researchers.
First is pleasure. That's the shortest lasting. Good food, a new purchase, that kind of thing. Fleeting.
Second is passion or flow. That lasts longer. It's being in the zone, totally engaged in something challenging. Time just flies. Peak performance.
And the third, the longest lasting, is higher purpose. Feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself, making a meaningful contribution.
And the key insight from the research. Most people chase pleasure first. But higher purpose seems to be the most durable foundation for genuine long-term happiness.
This connects everything back to the Zappos journey, right? Customer happiness, employee happiness, his own personal happiness. They all became tied to this larger mission, this purpose of delivering happiness more broadly.
Even things like perceived progress for employees, that ties into fostering passion and flow, that sense of growth.
Exactly. So the book really leaves you, the listener, with some big questions to ponder.
Like, what are you ultimately working toward? What are your core values? What's your passion? Your purpose? Your company's purpose, if you have one.
And he includes some powerful quotes too, that Buddha quote, "Happiness never decreases by being shared."
And others like Shaw's. Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself.
It's been quite a journey we've covered, from, selling worms and faking French horn practice.
To building and selling huge companies, facing near-death business experiences, consciously building a culture brick by brick.
And ultimately, finding this path where profits were seen as a way to fuel passion and pursue a higher purpose.
It really distills his unique vision that business doesn't have to be just about transactions. It can be a vehicle for delivering happiness.
We've definitely hit a lot of the key insights and experiences that shaped Tony Hsieh, hopefully giving you that valuable shortcut we promised.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Thinking about Hsieh's path, especially his insights on the 3 types of happiness. What is your ultimate why? What's driving the things you pursue?
Are you building your life mostly around chasing pleasure? Or are you actively trying to cultivate passion and find that sense of higher purpose?
And pulling from those poker lessons, are you being deliberate about choosing the table you're playing at in your own career, in your own life? Or are you just playing the hand you feel you were dealt? Something to think about.